Pete Turner, part 2, today on Locked On A's.
You are Locked On A's, your daily podcast on the Athletics, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On A's, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. I am your host, Booney, one name. Thank you for making Locked On A's your first listen of the day. I'm from the Bay Area, and I've been a diehard A's fan since 1981. And I'm here to bring you a real fans take, covering everything from Oakland to Sacramento to Las Vegas. This is the place for A's fans to get the latest game breakdowns, team news, and more. This is where the passion of the fans take center stage. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. And please hit that subscribe button wherever you are following the show. Happy New Year, everybody. Well, almost New Year. Not quite there yet. I'm wearing my New Year's outfit. It's what I'm rolling with, debating to go with black tie or not. It's going to be a game time decision. I don't know quite yet. Didn't really wake up on the right side of the bet this morning. Woke up to old Jock Pederson's press conference with the Texas Rangers stating how they are going to take the West back from the Astros, with no mention of the A's. Slow your roll, Jock. First of all, shocked you got a press conference. Second of all, not worried about you or Nathan Eovaldi re-signing. I think that is about all the Rangers have done this offseason. I already guaranteed that the A's will win the American League West. And if players like Jock Peterson, whatever it may be, keep running their mouths, I might come out and say not only will the A's win the AL West, they will run away with it. For those who say, hey, well, put money on it then, I'm that confident. I already did. American League West odds are not out yet, but have the A's to win the American League at plus 7,500, and I have Lawrence Butler to win American League MVP at plus 5,000. I made these bets legally and at my discretion, so relax on any of that. Part 2 of Pete Turner today. Thinking back to his interview, what I loved about Pete was first and foremost his perspective. He looked at two sides of an issue. He evaluated and came up with his opinion based on what he would do in that position. I think I was right on when I said there wasn't anything earth-shattering with what Pete said, but he constantly made sense. He constantly analyzed the situation, he assessed the situation, and he came up with a plan to solve the situation. For example, when he assessed the difficulty in getting things done in California versus Nevada, I thought he phrased his statement perfectly. Quote unquote, everyone has rights in California. Groups, institutions, corporations, and people. And we can gather and we can fight for the thing we want to fight. And we will get our day in court. And that means it is really, really hard to build things. I think that quote sums up Pete. He analyzed, he assessed, and came up with a positive and negative to a situation. Any type of solution to a problem never has all good. It has a positive side to it, and it has a negative side to it. For you making that decision, you have to find out which side fits you and is an ideal fit for your situation. I have received a lot of criticism from Oakland fans with regard to my take on the A's leaving because I'm not on board with the hate towards Vegas, Sacramento, etc. I'm going to call it as I see it. If I believe the A's are going to Vegas based on what is going on, I'm going to tell you that. I've been to more games than a majority of anyone watching or listening. And I don't get to do that next year, and it sucks. I'm bummed out that the A's are leaving. It sucks not being able to go to a baseball game so easily. I was actually on the website to buy season tickets for next year in Sacramento. And while I was about to press checkout, I was like, what am I thinking? As the drive is about 2 hours each way. I've been critical about the A's attendance over the years, which came off as me blaming the fans for the move. Do I blame the fans? Let me say it this way. It is hard to live in the Bay Area. Everything is hard about it. It's expensive. It's way overpriced. It's tough to buy a home. It's tough to raise a family. Public transportation is a challenge. All these factors make something like going to a baseball game, regardless of the stadium, regardless of the team's performance, and regardless of the owner, a distant second to everything else in life. Everything else in life that people have to deal with on a daily basis. So no, I don't blame the fans. But the issue of the A's moving is so much bigger than what is on the surface. It is so much bigger where we all need to step back and evaluate and put ourselves in the position of ownership. Have they handled things good? No, they have not. They have not been transparent. They've been aloof. They haven't been forthcoming. And if I were to give them a Yelp review as far as customer service, I'd give them 0.5 star. But I don't think they care. And at the end of the day, it's their team. They can do what they want. To find a solution to the issue, if we're really looking for one, we can't just bang on one individual and one source. Because the issues stem from so many different sources. It's just not one person. Happy New Year, everybody. Thank you for watching. I will see you next year. Here is part 2 of Pete Turner. For a guy that's been all around the world who has a different perspective than most and with sports changing, question for you. The culture of sports today, is it sports that's changing so much, or is it society? And talking about NIL and the college outlook and obviously contracts going out for Juan Soto and the fighting going on with the A's leaving Oakland and going to Vegas, etc. Is this a sports issue or a society issue?
Super good question. Culture's odd because so culture crosses. It's like an intersection, right?
Sure.
And sort of in the last 5 years, we've had a lot of people that don't want to obey the traffic laws, and they want to be seen. They want to be individuals. And look, culture just, it moves and it kind of flows and things push it. But it's really hard to, when people say, oh, we're going to build a culture of this, that's essentially impossible to do because it requires thinking that is so focused on that, it's hard to get anything else done, right? And then you don't even know if that's the right culture to build, by the way. So, and by the way, when people say this, how many of them actually measure their culture? essentially nobody, right? So as a guy that knows a lot about culture, I will tell you that when your baseball team is struggling to attract people to come to the stadium, if your TV ratings are low or not very good, you are missing things in the culture. There's a lot of things that we can do. We're so diversified. It's part of our culture right now. Well, the antonym for diversity is unity. And so if you aren't unified and you're diversified, it's really hard to manage and throttle that. So when we talk about diversity, it's diversity as long as it's comfortable for us. When we talk about unity, it's like, that teeter-totter, you don't want anything to be too unified because then it becomes brutal. You don't want anything to become too diversified because then it becomes ethereal. So you're trying to balance those things. And I think sports is always trying to compete. But now look, when we were kids, you really couldn't be a professional skateboarder. And if you did, it was going to be long troughs of being poor. And then the great guys got to pop up again, right? So that's a really hard path. There were very few guys that rode a motorcycle for a living. These things are all wildly more popular now. Rally car, all these different kinds of racing that have come out. Surfing, you can make millions of dollars as a surfer now. So there's a lot of attention and competition for talent. There's a lot of competition for eyeballs. And that's just part of the thing. So when baseball was trying to compete with these other sports, everything, remember I said before, everything's a competition. Everything is a competition. And is that society? Well, I think society's always done that, but I think computers have allowed us more access to more things because you don't just have to pull out a book and read it like I did as a kid. I'd read up Total Baseball and I would just memorize and I would read all the baseball books and I would put it all in my computer right here. And so now a lot of the things I pull out, I've known for 50 years because I read them, when I was a little kid, and that's not necessary anymore, right? I haven't looked up a single stat while we were talking at all, but if I wanted to, I could just be here silently typing and pull up incredible resources. That gives people the ability to have choices on what they want to do. I'm talking to my buddy last night. I can order a world-class dinner from New York, a world-famous restaurant, and have it sent all the way to me here in California. I can eat New York food in less than 24 hours from ordering it. That's incredible. Yeah. But with that comes choices and options, and not everybody wants to watch baseball. It's not essential. Boxing used to be a top tier sport. It used to be fights all over the nation every night of the year.
Yeah.
That's not true anymore. There's a lot of fighting, but it's not like it was where everybody paid attention to it. And that'll never happen again for fighting because it's just not, it won't ever come back the way it was. Something else will come and replace it instead of boxing making a big comeback. Horse racing also. Totally different thing than it was 50 years ago.
You are commissioner of baseball.
Oh.
What would you change now under these conditions?
Yeah.
Under these conditions, you work for the owners, obviously. Commissioner works for the owners, right? Okay. You're making $25 million a year. Okay. So commissioner, I think Manfred is due to leave office in 29 or 30. So about 15 years, I believe he's been commissioner, approximately. Yeah. So let's call it $375 million will be earned approximately, again, roughly. $300 to $350 million will be earned in his bank account by the time he is done being commissioner. You're commissioner under these circumstances, working for the owners. What do you change?
Yeah, I change a number of things. Well, first off, I don't just act like king and just change things. I'm a little more deliberate than that. So one, I talk to the networks and I'm like, you've got to, like, we have all this data on what's going on in the field. You've got to represent that on the field. If you recall back when, Vince Coleman and Willie Wilson, when these guys were stealing bases, it was exciting. They'd go picture in picture and you'd see Willie out there and you're like, he's got his foot on the turf and
when
one foot
Ricky
in the dirt.
Walked, it was one of the most exciting things ever. Yeah. Sorry to interrupt.
Right. And then he would hop over and both feet are on the grass. Oh my God. He's got an enormous lead. Now, and it's like, it was so exciting. And we're not even talking about the batter pitcher combination. We're talking about Ricky Henderson being there. Like, is he going to run? And we're watching on that screen and it's like, oh my God. So I would consider allowing more pickoff moves, and look, you got to figure out how to work these things out. But I also get that data on there. Give me the augmented reality of showing me what a lead looks like and in real time, show me the speed that these guys, I'd love to see that. I think that people would get excited about those things. So the regional sport networks are in a lot of trouble. I would look at diversifying that. If I was baseball, I would try to look. This Pete spending everybody else's money. I'd buy out all those contracts and say, "Hey, this isn't going to work anymore. Let's all agree to do something else. Figure out what that looks like. Don't just make a rash decision, but do that." But then I would sell at a very low price. Look, I'd sell Booney a fan license to broadcast A's games, and let you build your own content. And I'm not trying to break the bank with you. Matter of fact, I want you to make money, because if you're making money, I'm taking the cut of the money you're making. Now I've got 10,000 licenses or whatever it's going to be that I sell. And I've got all these different revenue streams. And then we could look at investing in those businesses and like, how do we get you to help us be better at us? Because you're better at knowing A's fans than the A's could ever be, because you've got your own little local community. Right. And so I would look at doing more engagement in that way. And if I could sell, let's say I don't know what the numbers will be, but let's say a fan license was $1,000 for the year, and then you could broadcast games. And obviously, look, you can't swear. You have to run our ads when we say run our ads and all that kind of thing. But a lot of that, you want to go out and sell ads on your own, you get this much ad time. And if you can't fill it, we'll fill it for you. And hopefully by the end of the year, you've got more than $1,000 and you've had this worldwide exposure to the thing through our brand. I would expand the league. I'd get it out to, during my time, if I worked for another, let's say 15 years, I would try to get it out to probably 8 more teams, just because I think you can always find more talent in baseball. It takes a lot of time. I'm saying 8. So if I got 4, I'd be stoked, right? But I would make those changes. I would incentivize, or probably not penalize, but incentivize things that kept arms on pitchers' bodies. I'm all for thinking about a speed limit. Like you can have 2 100-mile-an-hour pitches in a game. Anything beyond that, illegal pitch. If the batter hits it and they want their outcome, they get to have that.
Interesting.
But I would look at something like that. I would reward teams. I would probably penalize teams that had a lot of shoulder and elbow surgeries. So you get 3 a year. Anything beyond that, we're going to start taking away value from you, right? And saying, hey, look, you're going to have to change this. You're going to have to find some different way to do it. You're going to have to try a different approach to hitting and pitching. I love oddities in ballparks. So like the strip from home to the pitcher mound that used to have in Diamondback Stadium. I like Tal's Hill. I like it when stadiums have something unique so that these crazy things can happen and we can talk about Tal's Hill for the next 25 years. So those are some things that I would probably look at, right?
How about a floor cap, salary cap?
The players don't want it. I don't want anything the players don't want.
But how about as far as, like, for example, the A's have to spend, let's say, $100 million. The Pirates have to spend $105 million. I mean, they kind of have one right now already, but no.
Yeah. Look, those teams should spend money, but also the businesses have to be healthy enough to spend money. And you don't want to make a business suffer so that it has less value. I don't know what the answer is there. But I do know that if I look at the Major League Players Association, I wonder why guys like Trevor Bauer, Julio Urias, Wander Franco, why are they just adrift? I'm not justifying bad behavior. What I'm saying is if there is a lifetime ban for 1 or 2 times of domestic, then say it and make it happen. We haven't even heard the results of the Major League investigation on Urias, and it's been well over a year. Baseball was going to ignore Bauer and just keep him out until he's like, well, I have a contract to go play for the Dodgers and you guys aren't doing anything. So I'm just going to show up at spring training because that's not necessarily baseball, but and then all of a sudden they got hot and they're like, okay, here's what we're going to do. They were willing to let that drift. The Player Association has got to step up and protect its players. Again, not from doing wrong things, but say you have to have a more transparent investigation process. Yeah. When Urias is charged with a misdemeanor and he's not going to do any jail time, right? They're just like, hey, it's a procedural misdemeanor. You're going to do these things. And baseball is still trying to figure out what happened. And now we have video. Come on. Like that to me is a bigger problem because that is going to turn into, and again, I have to say this over and over again. I'm not justifying bad behavior, but now Urias can go and say, hey, I'm going to sue you guys because I'm being blocked from this game. Yeah. And I haven't heard this. And that's bad for baseball. So Commissioner Pete would be like, hey, you guys got to knock that off. We got to figure out how to have paths to redemption, mea culpas and all that stuff. But that to me is a bigger problem because we're exposing ourselves to risk as an organization because we're not defending everybody equally. And if that's the case, then all of a sudden, look, as much as we don't want to like John Rocker, The guy has a
Yeah,
right to
right.
say what he wants to say, right? And so we
Absolutely.
have to be able to defend that. That to me is more important than floors, because I think floors sort of take care of themselves. You know, I wish the Pirates would spend more, but I don't know how much money they have. I'm not going to spend someone else's money. I mean, I did with all of the owners, but
This episode is brought to you in part by Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? That's definitely happened to me. I had a few subscriptions that I didn't even realize I was still paying for, and Rocket Money made it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of 500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. For me, one of the best features is the subscriptions tracker. I've used it to cancel services I wasn't using anymore, and I've already saved a ton. Plus, with their goals feature, I've been able to automatically set aside money for my future. No more stressing about budgeting every month. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. I saw a couple of your articles or post and or both with regard to analytics at the high level, wins above replacement, etc. I was looking at the Fangraphs posted their own top 100 projected players for 2025. I didn't like the list. Obviously, I hated a lot about it, but one of the things I didn't get was Brett Rooker. Obviously, was not in the top 100, which was crazy to me. And when people are predicting the A's lineups for next year, for me, for example, I watch every single game. I'll score it. I'll look back on what really happened. Yeah. And while I believe analytics is different, it should be used more as a tool where it seems like it is being used more as the rule. What is your take? It seems like you have dove deep into that. And just by that list itself, that and a guy like Brett Rooker's not on it, for me, just the credibility for me, who's somebody who's already a skeptic towards it, is a little lost.
You have to balance it. You have to. I just was last night working on a number, and look, I am not a statistician, right? But I can use logic and I can look at things. And so we fall in love. And again, I'm going to pick on Ohtani because he's the number one guy and everybody is just overly excited about it. And we should all enjoy him right now. When he played just down the road from here in Anaheim, man, I would go see because he was pitching. I actually saw him play the outfield one time. He didn't do that very often. So you want to appreciate him while he's here because what he's doing is essentially impossible and he will get knocked off that mountain and you don't know when it'll be. Back when the Dodgers had Greinke and Kershaw and they were Cy Young candidates, I'm like, this is so rare. Like this is not going to last. And if it blew up next year, it could. So Rooker, has a great year. And if you looked at that and went, is he going to do that again? Pete Alonso, where did that guy go? What happened to him? If he was back next year, nobody's going to be surprised. We'd all be thrilled about it. And so that's baseball. It's very hard to predict. And so when you rely too heavily on things, and I think this is something that the organizations have to figure out, when you do trade away Josh Donaldson, and that's a wound that your fan base can't absorb, man, and if that trade goes bad, which that one did, all of a sudden, how do you fix that? Like your numbers say move Donaldson. And ultimately, it was a good move to move him. Yeah, they lost out on some peak performance, but you don't know that going in. So if you can extract value from the other team, replenish your farm system, I get that you make these moves, these trading 5s and 1s, like, hey, we'll give you our one guy, you give us these 5 young guys, whatever. I understand that part of the business. But if it causes a rift between you and your fan base, which it does for a lot of people, like the Dodger fans love Cody Bellinger and they're desperate for him to come back. He's not the same player, but the fans are crazy. And so they're like, bring him back. And when you watch the game every day, like I deconstructed the season last year for the Dodgers, and I looked at like, is Ohtani the MVP of that team? And someone had said, well, in July when guys like Kevin Biggio were playing first base, that's when Ohtani stepped up. And I'm like, okay, is that true? And I looked. Teoscar Hernandez won more games in July than Ohtani did. And then I looked at the whole season and I compared like when Ohtani hit a home run. And again, look, Ohtani's great. Let's understand that. Like,
yeah, no, I get it.
But when we just look at WAR and go, look at his WAR, look at 50-50. I don't care about 50-50. Those 50 plus stolen bases equaled about 6 extra runs. And a lot of them when the Dodgers already had the season in the bag. And so what is valuable? Is it Teoscar? And I'm old on the numbers here, so I might be wrong about this, but I believe he was, when he hit and drove in 3 runs or more, the Dodgers were 12-1.
Yeah.
12-1. Ohtani didn't have that. And for a long time, he was quite a ways back. And then he got hot in September and changed that.
Yeah,
so I'm not saying he's not valuable. But you can look at that. You can look at Gavin Stone, who was, until he got injured, was probably the best pitcher they had and probably the MVP given the challenges they have with pitching. So we can look at WAR. And I did, if I can continue on for a second. So when you look at WAR as the only measure, you're missing the day-to-day action. You're missing that home run. Like, yeah, that home run made it 7-2. Great. I'm glad he hit a home run, but is that valuable to the team? Not as much as Teoscar going, hey, we're down by 2, and I just hit a 3-run home run, right? Yeah. We all can agree on that. When you steal a base and then the next guy gets an out and you're standing at second base, not all that valuable. If you steal around and then you get driven in by Mookie Betts, who was followed by a double by Freeman, did you need to steal that base in the first place? Not really. I mean, okay, a little bit of value, but not the value you want it to be. And then if you miss time, like Mookie was easily an MVP candidate when he got hurt, when he got beat, hit by the ball, and it broke his hand. He easily could playing shortstop, playing second base for the Dodgers. Oh my God, like that was a great thing. And I'm using the Dodgers as an example just because we're talking about the big numbers, right? And when he went down, the Dodgers went down. Well, that seems awfully valuable to me. And so the thing I worked on last night was WAR is, I used to say WAR is silent on durability. What it is WAR is a bad measure of durability. And so if you're on the field, yes, your value tends to go up if you're a good player. If you're not on the field, that value, whatever rate that you accrue WAR at, let's say it's 1 in every 21 games, which is excellent. Every 21 games, you accumulate 1 WAR. Wow, that's a hell of a player. When you're gone, that's the cost because you're not there to contribute that piece of that WAR that you're trying to add, that win that you're trying to add. You're not there for that. So look, players got to rest. All right. So that's fine. But it does decrease your value. And I ran the numbers and look, this is Pete's numbers and it's not even, I'm not even satisfied that I've totally nailed it yet, but you could take 20 WAR off of Mike Trout's career total. I think it was 24 was the number.
Yeah.
Because he's missed so much time. Chase Utley, same thing. Everybody's crazy about Chase Utley being, right. And when he was playing and on the field and good, boy, in that context, yeah, there's all Hall of Famers around him that have done that. But he missed so much time that his case becomes it's like he's like less than Ian Kinsler. Now, I haven't done the numbers on Ian Kinsler yet, right? But it depresses your value. It's not that the player's bad, but you have to be on the field to add value. And if you're not there, if Blake Snell can't pitch, then it's a cost. Someone else has to go do it. And so we need you there. You have to rest. You have to balance that. And then somewhere in there is where that all balances out. WAR is bad at that. And we tend to lose sight of the value of simply being durable and available.
Speaking of the analytics, Moneyball, do you believe Moneyball was true or do you believe it's a big lie?
No, it's true. All baseball teams, I don't call it analytics. I just call it stats, right? All teams have way more statistical analysis going on. They look at everything. Spin rate is a product of Moneyball. You're looking for advantages. For a while, the A's were ahead of everybody, not everybody, almost everybody on this, right? And so when they picked up, they would pick up low ball smashing fastball hitters, right? Because the league was like pound the strike zone low with fastballs. And they're like, okay, we're going to get Chris Davis, Chris with a K. And what did he do? He pounded, that guy crushed low fastballs. That's what he did.
Right. And
so if you can find Chris and you're like, this environment suits his kind of swing, we can get him for next to nothing. Okay, there's your free agent or there's your low risk trade acquisition. And so, yeah, nobody wants to make bad decisions. That's not going to be, yes, go with your gut. Sometimes go against the numbers. I mean, Tommy Lasorda bringing up Kirk Gibson. Oh my God. Like that's the longest long shot ever to pay off. Right. But also don't bunt though. Bunting is for the most part dumb. It doesn't work. Yes. Sometimes in the playoffs, you need to spark some excitement. You need to make something happen. Oh, okay, great. But we're talking as the exception, not as the rule. Don't walk. This drove me crazy, man. This is all Moneyball stuff. If you're in the National League before the DH, do not walk the number 8 hitter. Get that dude out. It's the catcher. It's the backup catcher. You can't get that guy out. Get him out. Start the next inning off with the pitcher, or force the other team to go, man, we can't have our pitcher lead off this inning. We need to run. And you get that pitcher out of the game because you want that. You wanted that bat in there. That's all Moneyball.
Here's the problem I have with Moneyball. I'm going to push back a little bit on that. I believe what you're saying as far as don't walk the 8 hitter and strategies with around the game that come from Moneyball are true. I feel at certain times the upper management gives themselves a little too much credit, which ends up working out for them financial because of labeling something as how smart they are. And the A's are a perfect example of that. And we look at the movie that was made, right? What everyone forgets is everyone talks about Moneyball.
Yeah.
I mean, shoot, they had 5 top 10 picks on that team.
Yeah.
Zito was the 7 overall. Mulder was the 2 overall. Chavez was like number 10. The talent they picked up from the draft was enormous. They signed Jermaine, traded for Jermaine Dye, who was an all-star. Yes, did signing someone like Chad Bradford and that sort of thing as far as a good value work out for them? Sure. But what team doesn't have that supporting role player that you need in order to win a championship?
That's right.
So for it all to be labeled as Moneyball is something it just drives me nuts. No, you guys had really, really, really good players, and that exists with the A's going forward. The fallacies that the A's have with regard to not spending is why I love the A's. I love the A's accidentally because they are screwed up on the ownership side of things. The draft picks they have gotten, young kids coming up, and it also has to do with the major leagues. 6 years in Major League Baseball before you can be eligible for a free agent contract. I mean, by the time Brett Rooker is eligible for it, it's going to be like 30, 32, I believe, 31. It's right. Crazy. Yeah. So to a point, I agree with it, but again, I think it takes a little too much attention off the players that are actually getting it done, that actually were really good players to start with.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of those times you're putting an advantage in your back pocket. And so you make this call that's uncomfortable. You avoid catastrophe. We hate that as fans. You pulled Blake Snell in the 5th inning. Like, yeah, but you know what? 3rd time through the lineup, he's not very good. Like, you never let him go. You never let him do it. Just let him do it, right? We hate that. But they've avoided risk. They're like, for sure, he's going to degrade. Some pitchers don't have that problem, and they're hyper elite. And so you let those guys roll, right? This is like the loss of aces. We don't know what an ace looks like anymore. And some of that is in the numbers. And so when they like, hey, we're going to put a bunch of 50.5% wins in our pocket, and you lose those bets almost at a 50-50 rate. So close to it that you can't even tell. That's frustrating for fans, this risk avoidance, the, relying on pitchers that keep the ball out of the field, like the high K per 9 inning things, and it tears their bodies apart. That reliance, that's not the game that we want to see. And so some of that stuff, yes, you can find holes in the game. I can't stand the modern NBA. Like no one's there to get a rebound offense. Oh my God. And so I don't watch it. So the numbers are right, but I don't like that product. And so what do you do about that? So I'm not as against what you're saying as you might think. Also, I don't think that you can just use one number to evaluate somebody. WAR is a great guideline. It gets you started. And then you dig in and you're like, oh my gosh, Ohtani did have a great year. It was very valuable in terms of WAR. However, Teoscar Hernandez might have been the MVP of the Dodgers last year. And
no question.
Lindor playing shortstop for sure had a ton of value. And to say that like, oh, that's beyond the pale. Oh my gosh, let's lose our minds. No, like he played shortstop. That team was almost in last place in May. I wrote about this in one of my articles on X, and then he brings them roaring back. That has value. Value is a lot of things, and so when we do look at the numbers, we're not perfect with the numbers. We're still learning all the time. But if you can identify a player that is undervalued, which is Moneyball, then yeah.
Right.
And by the way, in the book, they talk about Mulder and Zito and those guys. They're in the book. It just the movie. I don't know if you know this, but the movie was really hard to make. They went through rewrite after rewrite after rewrite because you have to make a story that's marketable. So it's one thing to have Brad Pitt and have him, have chewing tobacco and act like he's, like knows anything about baseball. It's another thing to take that book that's very analytical and then bring it over to the side where it's entertaining. It was really hard, and the movie almost didn't get made. It took years and years for it to get made, actually.
Thank you for making Locked On A's your first listen today. For your second listen, find Locked On MLB. Baseball guru Sully brings a daily blend of humor and baseball, keeping you updated on every rumor and story throughout the offseason. Find Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts.